Open, outspoken, it's ophthalmology off the grid, an honest look at controversial topics in the field. I'm Blake Williamson. Hello and welcome to another episode of Ophthalmology Off the Grid. I'm Dr. Blake Williamson. In this episode, my co-host, Dr. Darrell E, and I invited our good friend, Dr. Karl Stonecipher, to talk about how he manages to make time for himself and his family outside of his professional obligations. And we tackle the age-old question, are you living to work or are you working to live?
Support for this podcast comes from Bryn Mawr Communications. BMC produces a number of informative podcast series spanning a variety of topics in ophthalmology. Discover a new show at itube.net/podcasts.
Welcome to another episode of Ophthalmology Off the Grid. I'm your host, Blake Williamson, and I have my co-host with me, the man, the myth, the legend, D. White. Darrell, this is our third show of our shows. This is our last show. We've come a long way. We've talked about getting into private practice after being in academics. We've talked about industry consulting and when to step away and how much to do. What'd you come up with for your third episode?
Well, Blake, I think that it's really, really important to have more than ophthalmology in your life. And when we were chatting with Lisa and Maria, we talked, you and I, about how important it is to center things around your family and how it's important to know that you can make that choice and that it is a choice. And if you don't do that, it's okay. Other people haven't done that, but they've chosen to really make the practice or their career the center. And that was a big deal thing. But a nice segue to what we're going to talk about today comes from that chat that we had with Lisa Fuller and Maria Scott. And that is, are you working to live or living to work? Is everything that you do, everything that you are, wrapped up in being an ophthalmologist? Or are you doing things at work so that you can do things that bring you a different type of joy? And with that, I'd like to introduce our guest. And before I do that, I've had a blast, Blake. So if they'll let you have redos, if I can come on and do this again, I don't know if I'd have as much fun doing it with anybody but you, but if I could do it with you again, that'd be killer. But having said that, I want to introduce our guest. And our guest is somebody who is one of the best known anterior segment surgeons in the world for all of the right reasons. This is a guy who helped develop some of the most important technologies that we do all the time. He was one of the pioneers of laser vision correction. He and I were one of the first 50 docs who did this. And he's been on the cutting edge of every refractive technology that's happened since the late 1980s and the early 1990s. On top of that, our guest may very well be the most interesting man in ophthalmology. So let me introduce your friend and mine, Karl Stonecipher, cataract and refractive surgeon from North Carolina. Karl, welcome aboard, man.
What an introduction. I don't know if I can live up to that, but I'm going to do the best I can tonight. Ophthalmology is a passion, but life is a bigger passion. And so I think, asking, how do we have fun outside of work is a huge, huge thing. And I'm one of those that work to live, just like you made a comment.
Yeah, Blake and I have we've been reaching out kind of through the airwaves to the younger generation, and as you know, Blake hasn't quite crested that 40 level yet, so he's still officially one of the youngins, and it's been fun as one of the old farts to kind of pretend that I was mentoring him along here. But so what do you think? We got the ophthalmologist's most interesting man on here, Blake. What do you think?
Yeah, it's funny when you just asked that question, are you living to work or working to live? I had this thing in my brain where I almost felt bad admitting that I'm at the stage where I'm trying to, work to live. Like when you said that, I was like, well, of course you should live to work because you're obsessed with ophthalmology and you love it. It's the most important thing in your life. But then that was like my initial reaction. But then I was like, well, no, really, I do love ophthalmology. It is my favorite thing. But more and more, I find myself trying to find ways to enjoy myself. But I felt bad, like even thinking that. I almost feel like we're kind of wired as physicians and surgeons, kind of not to, or to feel guilty about like wanting to go have fun, And that's what's great about Karl is, 7 years ago when I started, I would see Karl speak at, Caribbean Eye and these other meetings. I'm like, God, that guy just seems like a blast, And turns out he spent time in New Orleans, which makes sense. Now it all kind of registered when I realized he had some Tulane blood in him. We all kind of have some similarities, but he always looked like he was having a good time. And even in training, you kind of gravitate towards those people, right? Like you want to kind of spend more time and do more surgery with those attendings that are, just look like they're having more fun, and like life isn't just about work. So Karl's a great representation of that.
Hey, Karl, tell me, my sense is that it's always been this way for you, but tell me, go back as far as you can. Did you ever not know how important it was to be working to live, not living to work? Because it seems to me that this is a gift that you always had. But was there a time when maybe you had to sit yourself down and say, nah, this is not the way it's supposed to be?
Well, work ethic started with my father, and as you guys know, my dad played baseball, so he wasn't like real excited about paying for my way through college or medical school. So I can still remember going down to Dooney Blumenthal and at Liberty National Bank in Oklahoma City, and I was like, why am I going down to Liberty National Bank with you today, Dad? And he said, because you're going to get a loan. No, I don't. Why would I need a loan? He said, because you got to pay for your college and your med school. And so don't get me wrong, just like everybody coming out, we all have bills. We all have stuff we owe money for. And there's a new laser, there's a new phaco, or there's always something new. And like we were laughing earlier about, what the cost of living is, whether that's fun or work. And it seems like just about the time you get a device paid off, it's time to get a new one, right? That one, they don't service anymore. That one doesn't work anymore. But it really started probably with my mom. My mom worked for several different doctors. She worked for neurologists and psychiatrists and general surgeons. And I go hang out with those people. And I kind of realized that, back in the 70s, as a kid, a lot of those guys weren't having fun. And like, I thought I was going to be a thoracic surgeon at the first point. And I was spending time with these famous thoracic surgeons like Cooley and DeBakey. And don't get me wrong, they were doing tons of surgery like all the three of us do, but they were not having fun. Their necks hurt, their backs hurt, their lives were in disarray. And so I think that what I learned early on was, by example. My uncle taught me, he was a cardiologist, if you treat everybody like family, then you're never going to have a problem. Now you're going to have complications. But if you can look at that person that you've operated on and you can say, hey, I had a complication. This is what I would have done if you're my mother, my brother, my father, my sister, then I think you're all good. So you've got to feng shui work and play. Now, all of us have done a ton of surgery. I had to add it up the other day because someone had me present it, and I've done over 120,000 cases. And that's not laser, that's cataract, that's LASIK. I've done like 80,000 LASIK and 40,000 cataract. So I work. But at the same time, you can have fun while you work as well. So the staff, we're constantly doing stupid stuff in the OR because everybody's sitting there thinking, what? I'm about to go blind. And am I looking at the light? And am I doing what I'm supposed to do? And so I think that you've got to have an outside, activity. And you and I were talking earlier, and you said one or two. I think you need more than one or two, because as all ophthalmologists do is what? We all obsess, whether it's obsess on how fast we can do a cataract or, what we can do. I think if you have one activity, then you obsess over that. I had one of my good friends who won't be mentioned. He quit playing golf. That was his only activity. He said, I had to quit. And I said, why? He said, because I was hitting 1,000 golf balls a day. I was thinking, I got to get to a 2. I'm never going to get to a 2. And he just kept obsessing over that one activity. And then last but not least, my good buddy Uday Devgan took a whole year off. Okay. Took a whole year off because he felt like he was missing his kids growing up. So he spent a whole year with his kids. So you got to look at the good examples too. And you guys are good examples as well. I mean, I was just with Blake and his family, and we had fun. And what's the thing called, Blake? The Jeep? Is it a Jeep? What is it? Or a Blazer? What is it?
It's a Bronco, dude. Come
Bronco.
on. Those are fighting words, man. You know it's a Bronco. We don't
I
ride.
know. I figured I'd start you early. And then, Darrell, I know you've got kids and grandkids and all that sort of stuff. So if you wake up one day and you look around and there's nobody around you, you got a problem. And so I think it started off with Jim Rousey, the guy that I did my fellowship with. He always would say to me, if you give it to them, then they can't steal it, right? So you've called me, both of you have called me and said, okay, how would you do this, this, and this? And I'm going to tell you what I think is the best option that I may have tried. And I'll tell you when I failed. I don't have a problem with that because we're all going to fail. And if we don't fail, we never learn. And I always say, experience means you've done it wrong before.
Well, so going way back, Karl, we all had really interesting upbringings. We all had very different upbringings. We come from very different backgrounds, although we all ended up in a similar place. Was there anything from your early years when you were growing up that was the obvious first thing that you did outside of the practice? What was the first thing you said, I'm done with my fellowship. I'm done with residency. I'm done with medical school. I've got some time. Man, I'm so happy to get back to...
I started playing golf when I was like 5, and I started water skiing when I was 8. And so I didn't start drinking until I was a little older. I can't quite say that because you guys know.
I know my children might see this. I can never say when I started drinking because my mother's still alive. Although she knows because she was there the first time it became obvious. But still, I get that.
Yeah. So I think that, the wine collections and the wine sharing, that started early on too. But I think for the most part, my first job, that I really enjoyed and remember was working on a ranch. I started working on a ranch when I was 12. Literally, I made $1.12 an hour starting out. It's kind of hard to forget that. I thought I was living the dream because I was making all that money. I'd work 12 hours on a tractor or whatever. And then I put together a sprinkler company. A friend of mine and I started a sprinkler company. So I was always a bit entrepreneurial. Had a lemonade stand when I was younger. But like you say, you don't really remember. I don't know about you guys. I remember cases, but I just don't really remember living during medical school and residency. I remember having fun, don't get me wrong, but, medical school and residency, I was that guy that, give me the next case. I'll go to the ER. I don't care. And I think that if I can teach anybody a lesson that's young is you only have 8 years to get this down pat. So when you're in medical school, work. When you're in residency, go do that open globe, do all that sort of stuff. Because when you get out and you're looking to your right, you're looking to your left, there ain't nobody there. And it's just you. And so if you've done it before, then it's going to be so much more comfortable. And I don't mean don't do something that you're not capable of doing, but I think that your training time is meant to work. And then, like you say, when I first got out and practiced, I was looking around, like Blake will probably say, you're looking, okay, what am I doing for college? Am I saving enough money for my kids? And I think that they are important in terms of those terms, and you're going to do that. But at the same time, when you're getting out in the first thing you want to do is all your kids want to do is spend time with you. They don't care if you're at Disney World. They don't care if you're in Milan, like we're going to be in 2 weeks. They don't care where you're going to be. Now, maybe later in life, they want to go do that stuff. But early on, they just want to hang out with mom and dad. And I think that find first something that you and your kids enjoy. And I think that's a huge thing. And we happen to be boaters. So I had a ski boat start when I was young. I bought a ski boat when I was 16 or at it with my brother. And we basically kept care of it and worked on it and skied behind it. And I took that to New Orleans and took it to Louisiana. So you and I were talking about earlier a boat that you have in the backyard. I had the 1976 Evan Rude with an 85 on the back, and we had plenty of fun. It doesn't have to be the $330,000 Paragon. You can have fun with anything like an inner tube and a boat. And I just looked at my boat today. I got 999 hours on it. And I'm like, it's time maybe to get a new boat. But you've had so much fun on that boat. You kind of want to, you don't want to get, it's like a car that you love. You may not want to get rid of it so soon. So we're still having fun with that one.
So for those of you guys don't know, both Karl and Blake are excellent water skiers, and this whole new wake surfing thing. I've seen videos of them, and I've seen both of them doing the wake surfing thing. Karl with a grandchild or a nephew or a niece on the board.
It's my office staff's son. So I take my office out. They all go wake surf with me. Yeah.
And Blake with his child on it. So you guys clearly are both doing exactly that. I love the pictures and love the videos of those things, Blake. I mean, you're really good at it.
The best thing about it though, Darrell, is it's so low intensity on your legs and your back. I've had 2 back surgeries. Dad's had 5 back surgeries from playing football at LSU. And so I had to come up with things that I can do that's not going to break my back because I'm hunched over doing surgery all day. So first thing I do is I need to lose weight, honestly. But I'm starting to do more yoga, and I'm starting to do more low intensity activities like wake surfing. That's the best part about it. You're only going 10 miles per hour. You feel like you're going 100 miles per hour. And when you fall, it's not like skiing or wakeboarding where it hurts. So I have three kids under age 7. So I have to be cognizant of the activities I'm doing, for them, so that's one challenging thing about having too much fun is like, you're like, it's not just me I have to think about, it's all of my employees and the other doctors and all of, my family. So I'm trying to work that into my week. I'm wondering, Karl, do you, as busy as you are, have you had to like carve out certain parts of your week that's designated for certain things? Like for me on Mondays at lunch, I have my yoga instructor that comes to my surgery center, and we do yoga basically in the lunchroom. And on Wednesday nights, I have my radio show, which you've been to, and it's carved out. And that's what I said. Those are my little areas of fun that I have carved into my week, or else I'll never do them. Do you have to kind of plant that with your schedule and make it an automated thing?
Yeah, one of the things that I tell you, I joined plenty of gyms, and I think that you gloss over it, but it is so huge that you take care of yourself. You got to get sleep. Yes, we all went with 4 hours of sleep. Went with 6 hours of sleep. Maybe if we're out with Trattler, we may have 2 hours of sleep. But I mean, for the most part, sleep is important, and so you got to figure out how to be able to unwind and relax, because a lot of people don't do that. They just go home at night and fall asleep in the bed and don't have time, to relax. Yoga for me, I used to go to the gym. I essentially converted when I got into my new house. I looked at my wife and I said, "This is your house. I just want one room that's mine." And so I just took that. It's not a big room. It's got all my workout stuff in it. The things that I do today are Peloton. I'm yoga. I am meditating. I get on a bike, and now I'm doing more fun things. Like I ride my bike into work. Now you can die doing that in North Carolina because they all honk at you when you're on the road. But I think for the most part, you got to figure out a way so that you don't wake up. And believe me, I've done it wrong. I can tell you, there were times when I was doing, at one point in the heyday of LASIK, I was doing 500-600 cases a month, but my back hurt and my neck hurt, and I wouldn't do anything. And then I finally decided, this isn't fun. So I got to figure out a way to make it fun. Now, whether that's get another partner or whether that's figure out how to divide and conquer all that and get more organized. But at the same time, Blake, you're 100% right. There's got to be me time, and me time can be golf time. It can be fishing time. But at the same time, there's got to be family time, if you're so inclined. I mean, if you're married, or you have a partner or whatever, find time to spend, with those individuals that you love, or you're going to wake up one day and they're going to be gone. And you and I have seen that so many times in medicine in general. It's not just unique to ophthalmology. You've got to enjoy, those roads you share. And I'm not trying to bash anybody that splits up somewhere down the road. I'm just saying that usually it's a part that you guys grew apart because you weren't spending time together.
We had this incredible confluence of all of that in our lives here in the White family, from about, I'm going to say maybe maybe 2009 or 2010 till about 2017, 2018, when literally all 5 of the members of the White family were very, very involved in CrossFit. My boys owned a CrossFit gym. I was the lead programmer for the workouts in the gym. My wife ran the CrossFit Kids program. Both of the boys were the trainers, and my daughter, who was the only one who didn't live in town, joined a CrossFit gym in Bluffton, South Carolina. And it was wonderful, not only because we were all super fit. I mean, I was stronger and more fit than I was when I was a college football player, but we all had something that we could talk about. We had a touchstone that we could come back around to. And boy, oh boy, I was in a hurry at the end of the day to get out of the office, not because I was done with doing ophthalmology. I really love ophthalmology, but I knew that the minute I left that office, I was in the car and I was going to Comet CrossFit or CrossFit Bingo, where the boys were going to be ready. And I was either going to coach for my sons or I was going to do a workout and my sons were going to coach me. And in the next room over, my bride, my best friend, my better 95%, was going to be coaching up the kids. And that was really a wonderful thing because our collective family avocation was all basically the same thing. We did that one thing together. So we had that super outside of the practice bonding experience. And you know, who knows if this is associated, but I'm 2 weeks out from another hip replacement. I think that's probably the college football that did it, not the CrossFit. But I'm dying to get back to CrossFit. I haven't been able to do it for a couple of years because my hips have failed me spectacularly. But I'm dying to get back to it, in part because it's so enjoyable, and in part because, unlike my garage gym and your room, Karl, and your trainer coming to you, Blake, so it's all a very, small thing that we're doing right now. I miss the gym, man. I miss the CrossFit box. I miss that, the shared experience outside, which is kind of like our experiences in ophthalmology. We get to share so many things, but I'm sharing that avocation as well.
Right. And on those points, you brought up 2 great points. Maybe, you iron out some time to go do Little League baseball. I was terrible at baseball. And the reason I was terrible at baseball is nobody knew how blind I was. And I was really nearsighted, and nobody realized that till I was about 12. And I have great parents. I mean, they would have taken me to the doctor. I just never complained. And so, I always tell the story of myself. My Little League coach basically said to my dad, if somebody's going to tell you, it might as well be me, but your son's really bad at baseball. And I said, I'm trying out here. And so anyway, my mom said that wasn't going to happen. They finally realized I was really nearsighted and just couldn't see the baseball. Once I got glasses, I could see. But to my point, I went and coached baseball. I knew nothing about baseball. I didn't play baseball in college. I didn't really even do a lot of the sports my dad did, just because, he was so good at it. I played like rugby and soccer, and he didn't know the rules too. But, Blake, you mentioned earlier, involve your staff. So I've seen you do tons of stuff with your staff. So I'm always taking my staff out on the boat, or we're going out on adventures or excursions, and we include the family. So what we did, you talk about having fun and sharing. We have a nice old 1909 golf course, Donald Ross, just up the street. And I brought the entire staff out. It wasn't about a golf tournament. It was about how can the staff have fun. So we had an A player and then a not so A player, because those people had never played before. So if Blake and you were the A players, you got 3 shots on a par 5, 2 shots on a par 4, and 1 shot on a par 3. And then the rest of it was played by the other team members. And by the end of it, everybody was having fun. And then we had a big barbecue in the backyard. I didn't cook any gumbo. I probably should have had some crawfish and gumbo, but we had barbecue in the backyard, and the kids came over. It wasn't just an adult affair, because, I don't know about you guys, but I spend more time at work than I do probably with my kids and my family. But at the same time, if we all know each other, then Lynn's always coming up to work and seeing what she can do, to help out the gang when we're all stressed out. And so I think it's important to share all that with your staff too, because you spend so much time with them.
Yeah, I love watching when you guys got dressed up for Halloween in those crazy ass costumes and went and visited all your referring docs. I thought that was so cool. I love how you involve your staff. One thing that we've done mixing fun with staff is around Christmas time, and I have to give a shout out to Jeff Whitsett in Houston, Texas. He taught me this. But for Christmas, instead of giving like my little core team, I have a core team of about 6 gals that go with me to all my locations. And so for my core team, instead of giving them each a Christmas gift or a gift card or whatever, I take them to the mall and I give them each $100. And I say, we meet at the food court and I say, you got 30 minutes to spend this, but it's got to be on yourself. You can't spend it on anybody else. And I'll time them and they just jet off running to spend the money as quickly as they can. And the first one that comes back gets another $100 cash. So we do that, and then I take them to Ruth Chris's for a nice lunch, immediately following the shopping spree, basically. And Whitsett taught me that, and that's been our tradition for Christmas time ever since. So it's fun to kind of involve your staff in games like that.
I'm gonna steal that one. I tell you, the Halloween thing is so funny now. I have 495 doctors that refer into me. Now, obviously, you can't go visit that many, so we visit the top 10, and everybody strives to be in the top 10 for us to go visit. And everybody, thinks of what the theme is going to be. We're always fighting. We've already got our theme for this year. I can't announce that because I always bring the pictures out. And then afterwards, we go visit these top 10 referring docs, and we go have a great lunch somewhere and just sit around. And my favorite one, we went as Guns N' Roses one year. And so we're sitting there in some country bumpkin, sidekick here in North Carolina, and everybody walks over and they're like, "Are you guys playing later tonight?" And we're like, "Yeah, we're the cover band." So it's just good fun stuff, and the staff, they love that stuff, and you don't, again, going back to, everybody looks at it, oh, I got to spend $1 million or a gazillion dollars to do that. You don't have to spend a lot of money, and $400, $500, $600 goes such a long way. We just did this recently, Darrell, to your point. I didn't bring this up, so don't get me in trouble. One of my staff members looked at me, who will remain nameless, and said, "I think I weigh more than my husband." And I said, look, that's an HR nightmare. I said, I can't do anything. But I said, if we want to make it fun, I said, we can do the 10-pound challenge. So you don't have to participate. That was the funniest thing I've ever done. And when I got done, I got everybody, wins trophies, and I got everybody wins medals. So everybody got something for participating. We all joined Weight Watchers, and that was I want to say $15 a person. But what we're now have done since then, instead of having the gnarly, nasty stuff that we usually eat in the little back room, we now have healthful, more good items. And that goes back to Blake's comment. You can include the staff. We used to do in the 90s, we used to have a big room where the staff worked out. So we brought in a personal trainer and did that. But, people stopped doing that, especially with COVID. You can't, do that kind of thing anymore.
So we've had a nice run here, and I want to end up on one of the favorite things that you and I have done together, Karl, and I have a feeling, Blake, that we're going to be able to co-opt you into this. And this is not the first thing you and I did together, Karl. I don't know if you remember, but the first time you and I ever really met and really knew each other, we were skiing at the old Ayers meeting in Aspen, and my son was there. And my son actually won the slalom. He beat you, and he beat who's the guy from Westchester, Pennsylvania?
All I remember is Trattler and Adam usually end up at the top of the leaderboard.
Danny won, which was a riot and caused all kinds of trouble because he wasn't really there. But that's not the thing that I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is wine, and I want to finish with wine. Because for those of you who don't know, Karl, so Blake's got a glass of wine. I've finished mine. Blake, what are you drinking?
So I'm drinking a Pinot from the Nickel and Nickel winery. They make Farniente. So they have a Pinot that they do that's affordable. It's like a $50 bottle. It's not crazy, but it's a delicious Pinot, for half the price of what you get for a Nickel and Nickel. It's great.
All right. So I just finished my first glass of El Molino Pinot, which is ridiculous, and so I'm not even going to pretend it's not. which was my new discovery from our anniversary trip last year. And so EL, new word, MOLINO. It's worth looking for. It's absolutely fabulous. They were on the cover of the Wine Spectator this month, which makes me feel really cool because I discovered them first. But so this is one of the things I started off by saying, partly off camera, but one of the things that I love so much about Karl, the human being, is that not only is he the most interesting man in ophthalmology, and not only does he have this plethora of, that's right, I use plethora in an ophthalmology podcast, just want to point that out. Not only does he have a plethora of activities outside of ophthalmology, but Karl is the most generous man I have, a generous person I've ever met in our professional world. He shares all these wonderful things that he does. Karl never shows up without not a glass of wine, a case of wine. He has a wine suitcase and he takes it everywhere. We've been at meetings that were sponsored by industry partners for dinner, and Karl shows up with a case of wine. No one wants to drink their dreck because Karl's showing up with his stuff. Karl had the keynote speech at the Ohio Ophthalmology Society, and Alice Epitropoulos hosted the two of us the night before. And Karl shows up with a case of wine. And it's a case of stuff that A, nobody else can get, and B, you've been trying to get for a decade. And Karl just wheels in and says, hey, guess what I have for you? So Karl, my question is twofold. Number one, when did you really start drinking wine and why? And number two, when did you realize what a gift it was to share? Because it's really a terrific gift of who you are, not just the wine. It's a terrific gift of Karl Stonecipher when you do that.
So my uncle, so my family's a bit different. I'm Hungarian, Armenian, German, Irish, Cherokee Indian, and I'm missing one. But I'm a bit of a mutt, and that's the best one at the pound that you can find. So my mom's father always had wine on the table. So we had a little bottle, you lift it up, and it would sing "How Dry I Am." So it always had wine in it. Now, when we were little, it was diluted, obviously. They didn't give us full strength wine, but everybody drank wine because these people were from the old country and the water wasn't any good. So the wine was the only safe thing. My uncle is a wine, he is a weed expert, and he doesn't have an apothecary, I promise. He is a weed scientist who basically worked for the University of California at Davis. So I learned about, the snouted the snouted nosed beetle and the phloxera and all that sort of stuff on his early age. So I really learned that wine for me was a vegetable early on. It was not really there to get drunk. I was never a Boone's Farmer guy or never of that sort. But I don't denigrate those people that started there. If you look at Parker, he'll even say he started on the bad stuff, which was cold duck. So I think that in terms of, I started collecting wine based on birth years. And we just did, I'll send you a copy of it. It was a painting the whole family did together. So my daughter participated, my wife participated, I participated, and it's called A Fine Wine is One You Like. And so I learned that early on when I was younger at a wine tasting in Monterey, and it was just me and some other lady. And I said, it's just you and me, and I want to learn all I can about wine. And that's the first thing she said to me is, a fine wine is one you like. And from then on, she said, but it's no fun drinking it alone. So you got to have somebody to drink wine with. Now, don't get me wrong. We all come home, we have a glass of wine, but boy, how many times can you remember a wine that you drank that you really liked and you were with friends, or it was your daughter's wedding, or it was your best friend's, whatever, birthday party, or you guys were drinking wine, on top of the mountain after a great run. So I think that for me, the wine is the experience, but it's also the wine. So I think that if you can leave with something that nobody's had before, and I don't do that, to be ostentatious. I do that because I really like to share. It's kind of like Little League Baseball I was talking about earlier. You love to see the kids smile. That's why I love to teach. I bet we taught, 30 or 40 people to wake surf this summer, because you love that little smile as the kids get up. We just were with Raj this last weekend with his kids on the boat. And when they get up, boy, it's that sense of accomplishment. Well, the same thing goes with wine. You have a great wine, you look at each other and you're like, dude, that was really a nice experience. And so for me, wine is a vegetable. It's part of the meal. It's part of the experience. And if you don't have anybody to share it with, you're just drinking alone.
Darrell, and I think that my only thing I add to that is if it's ever in doubt whether to drink it or not, drink it. A lot of people will hold on to it. Like, don't drink it super late when you've already had too much to drink. But if you can drive a car safely, if you're doing okay, but it crosses your mind, should we drink this? The answer is yes. One of my best buds, he and his wife struggled forever to have a baby. They finally had a baby after all, in vitro and all that. And his dad showed up to the hospital. They were celebrating. He and his dad. He had a big bottle of Opus One wine, and he gave it to his son, my buddy, Bo. And he said, he's like, "Oh man, it's amazing." He's like, "Dad, should we drink it?" And he's like, "I don't know." And Bo was like, "I feel bad. I don't want to drink it, Dad. I'll save it for a better occasion." And his dad was like, "Absolutely not. Let's drink this thing." And they opened that bottle of Opus One. They drank it. He in the hospital room, and his dad passed away a week later. Imagine that. Imagine if they did not drink that bottle of wine. So my buddy Bo, he's the one that taught me, if it ever crosses your mind, should we drink it? Drink the wine.
And one thing you can say, wine labels. So I have wine labels from, it's kind of like photographs. I got wine labels, but I make people, you guys have both done it, sign bottles. I make my mom, every time she's with us, my mother does not drink at all, never has drank in her entire life. My dad obviously made up for her. He was roommates with Billy Martin, so they typically had fun together. But I think that if you can have them sign the labels, they're almost like you can pull them out later and say, "God, do you remember when we had our first kid? Or do you remember at Megan's wedding when we did that?" And so for me, the labels are important too. And now they got these little sticky things. You can just peel them off. So I can always remember who I had that fine glass of wine with. And sharing, if you don't share your education, if you don't share your energy, if you don't share your love, you're just wasting time.
Well, listen, I could tell wine stories all night long, and have, but I can't think of a better way for us to bring this to a close. That was absolutely lovely, Karl. So Blake, thank you again for letting me come and play in your sandbox. And Karl, I can't tell you how wonderful it is to have you as a friend. And thank you for coming and spending spending this time with us and sharing, the stuff that you do. Just one more indication that you're not only the most interesting man in all of ophthalmology, but you may be the most generous ophthalmologist that any of us know. Thank you, Blake.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'll try and stay interesting for you.
Perfect.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Ophthalmology Off the Grid. Thank you to my colleagues, Dr. Darrell White and Dr. Karl Stonecipher. Until next time, this is Dr. Blake Williamson signing off.